Welcome to this first Rethread Talk. This is by Nirali Bhatia, and we're so glad that she accepted our invitation and she joined us. This is jointly presented by Threading Thoughts and, of course, supported by Lean in Hyderabad. So we are very glad that you're all here. Thank you so much, Nirali. This was so sweet of you. It's a small group that we're trying to build, and we're really glad that people are talking about this now. Perhaps this was not a conversation people had a few years earlier, but I think your persistent efforts and efforts of a lot of other agencies as well has really created this awareness, or at least is trying to create this awareness. So let me give you a brief introduction of our speaker for today. And Nirali Bhatia is a cyber psychologist, an internet addiction therapist, and a psychotherapist. She is also a TEDx speaker and a corporate trainer. She is also the director of V4Web Cybersecurity and the founder of an anti-cyber bullying organization, Cyber BAAP, which stands for Cyber Bullying Awareness, Action and Prevention. She has recently been awarded as India's top woman influencer in cybersecurity. And we're so glad that you took time off. You have a crazy schedule, but so glad you took time off to join us today. And I'm sure we're going to learn a lot of things. So it's over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrudula. And it's always been pleasure connecting with you. And I still remember the, podcast that we did together. So there was no doubt that I would have not said yes. Once again, thank you to Linen for inviting me over here. And I have never believed that, numbers. I believe that even if you touch one life, you can make that difference, that little awareness which can save someone, even one person, your efforts never are waste. So thank you everyone who joined on a Saturday afternoon. It's not a great time to be, listening to someone or working, but however, you being over here encourages me to continue doing what I'm doing. What I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to share my screen. Here we are. When first me and Rodula, we started talking about this, I just mentioned to her that it was so natural for me to now get on to actually conducting trainings on Posh, because work from home has led to a huge role of the cyber world and the harassment in cyber world, which anyways has been my area of work for almost 2 decades now, but it has now creeped into the work lives as well. And it became a very natural progression for me to get on to this. And that's where we started, contemplating over that, how, in terms of, how learning cybersecurity can help us not only safeguard ourselves against various other instances in cyberspace, but also against, also help us preventing of online harassment. And that's how, the ideation happened, and that's how we have this topic. And I was very excited about it. So thank you, Mrudula, for this. Before I move forward, I really want to ask you, since you all are all from, working in some of the other corporate, is there anyone who's not very well versed with Posh, or are you all, every one of you all knows exactly what it is, so that I know that, okay, how much time do I put in explaining Posh, or how much time do I move on, right?
So really, a brief discussion on Posh would help, I think, just to refresh our memories as well.
Sure. Yes. So I have listed down, and these are the points that I'm planning to touch upon today, that what exactly is Posh Act. I'm not going to delve into details because, of course, that itself takes up, a couple of hours. However, we should be knowing, an overall picture, that what does it cover and what entitles to sexual harassment. So these are the points that I plan to cover today. Let's begin with what exactly is a Posh Act. So now there are two terms. One is Posh Act and one is Posh Law. Both of them have a thin difference between them. Can anyone highlight what is the difference between two? If anyone of you all want to attempt. So the basic difference is the act is about protecting or preventing sexual harassment at workplace. Initially, it was very specifically sexual harassment against women, but of course, we've revised it, and now overall, the act covers sexual harassment against anyone at the workplace, any employee at the workplace, whether you're directly employed or you're not directly employed. However, the law, the Posh law, till date, very specifically covers sexual harassment against women only. So if a male employee is harassed sexually online, it doesn't mean that he or he cannot make a complaint. He can. The act covers this. So IC can. IC is an internal committee which looks into the Posh matters. They can cover it. However, legally, it will not fall under the Posh law because that is very specifically designed to protect women from the sexual harassment at the workplace. Uh, Very roughly, if you remember, this whole act came into act in 1992, and it actually had begun as old as I believe. So it came into act in 2013, but it began at 1992 with Bhavri Devi's case. She was and she was employed with the government of Rajasthan in a particular community work where she had to go and sensitize people on child marriage. And in one such act, where she tried to explain a family who was about to get their 9-month-old baby married, the family did not take it well. And since she came from a lower caste, it became a big problem for the family, and they decided to teach her a lesson. So, a couple of months later, they actually gang raped her, like 5 of them, in front of her husband. Now, this all happened way back, and till date, she's fighting for justice. However, with support of a few, women activist organizations over there, at least we as a country got these Vishaka guidelines, which took care of, and it emphasized that every woman has a right to feel safe and secure at the workplace, and it is the employer's responsibility to provide a safe and secure environment. Because in her case also, the employer, that was the government who had employed her for that kind of job, put their hands up saying it is some internal matter between two communities and two castes. So that is the background, and that's how this act had come into the picture. In fact, there's a very beautiful video on YouTube where one of the journalists, Farhadat, who is actually felicitating her, and the lady from Vishaka who stood very, very thick with her till date. Like from 27 years, this battle is still on. And in that interview, this Babri lady, who is now, of course, a senior citizen, she just says one thing: my fight was never about alone myself. I wanted to ensure that no other woman ever feels as unsafe as I did feel. So you imagine a woman who's not literate, a woman who has not ever witnessed any of these facilities, any of these rights, nothing, has the courage to stand up. And this is what is expected out of each one of us. So in nutshell, what does the Posh Act cover? It emphasizes on 3 areas, that is prevention, prohibition, and redressal. Prevention as in terms of, sensitizing everyone, inculcating gender equality and inclusion. In whatever terms we can prevent the harassment, prohibit from, so having very stricter zero tolerance policies at the workplaces are expected. And if at all something like this happens, so as I've mentioned over here, that workplaces are divided into 2 categories, organized and unorganized. The organized category is where there are more than 10 employees. Not necessary that there have to be women employees. Even if there are no women employees, it still applies. It applies across the country. And every organization has to have an IC, which is called as an internal committee, who is responsible to address all of sexual harassment cases at the workplace. If it's an unorganized sector where there are less than 10 employees, then they can, so every district will have a particular committee, local committee, it is called as LC, who will be looking into the sexual harassment cases. Uh, when it comes to redressal, what they mean to say is that the IC has the power to come up with an appropriate action, whether it is restigation or termination of employment, or anything else that is appropriate after a neutral and appropriate investigation. So this is in nutshell about POSH activities. However, POSH Act. However, the law puts in to picture certain guidelines which have to be followed, as in the complaint has to be in written document. It cannot be an oral complaint. It has to be within X number of days of the incident that has happened. So it says about 60 days or 90, one of those it is, in which you have to make a complaint. And then it also ensures that proper investigation is taken care of, evidences are considered, and reporting of the, and within 90 days, committee has to come up with a redressal. So this is what the law covers. And as I mentioned, that law is very specifically towards the women, protecting women and not men. In case if a male victim is, if a male employee is a victim, then he can approach the police and he can approach the court as well. It will be taken under different sections, not necessarily POSH law. There are 5 major components of the POSH Act, which are very, very important for us to understand, to be able to identify what is accounted as harassment, which can be reported under the POSH Act. So the first component is the sexual harassment itself. Understanding that what exactly you mean by sexual harassment. So any unwelcome, sexually motivated behavior, whether it is direct or it is indirect, it is not about the intent of the sayer, but it is about the impact. So many a times people simply say, but I didn't mean it. I was just joking. It is not about your intent. It is about the impact it will have on the receiver. This is a very important aspect of the POSH Act and the POSH law as well. So if the receiving person of that particular comment or that gesture feels that it is harassing, it is embarrassing in any which ways, they have the right to go and complain. Another important aspect is workplace itself. It has very clearly defined that what accounts to workplace. So it is not only the immediate office place where you are working and you are reporting, but it is also an extended working place, as in the transportation provided by your work to travel on the work purpose. If you're traveling to another city, another office, a client's office, for a meeting, to a vendor's place, at any of these instances, if any aggrieved person, that is the woman in context over here who has felt sexually harassed, has the right to go and complain. Not necessary that it has to happen in your around your desk and around your workplace only. It could be any other workplace where you have been for the work purpose. Third important aspect to understand is the aggrieved woman, like as the law says that if the aggrieved woman has made a complaint. Now, what they mean by aggrieved woman is a woman of any age, whether directly employed or on a contract basis, or is an intern, or is a trainee, or even if he or she is, she is a visitor or a transgender, not necessarily only a woman. And of course, today we are also including men in this, can make a complaint. So many times there have been instances where it's not happened directly at your workplace, but for some official work, you have gone to a vendor's place or when if you're traveling and the driver has been misbehaving or has had has made inappropriate gestures or something, it can all account to sexual harassment under the workplace, and it can be covered under the Posh Act. And it's important for us to know that. It also covers that for some reason, if the victim has met with an accident or is unable to come, the family members on their behalf can also complain. It's not necessary, they need an authority. And in some extreme cases where something fatal has happened and the victim has ended their life or is no longer amongst us, then also family member can take up that particular case. The fourth important element in the Posh Act is the employer, is the understanding the definition of employer. Employer does not necessarily mean your direct boss or the owner of the company. What it means is it's someone who is in the management position. It could be your senior, it could be someone you report to, any supervisor. If it's a private organization, it could be a manager, it could be a subordinate. If it's a non-private or a public organization or a cooperative organization, etc., it could be any person in charge of management. Not always necessary that it has to be the main boss. And the last but most important one is the type of sexual harassment. There are primarily two types. One is, of course, the quid pro quo, that is a tit for tat kind of like, asking for favors. If you do this for me, this is what you get in return. And the other one is, which is in fact much more common, is the hostile work environment. So if someone creates an environment which is very, very hostile, it's very toxic for you to work, this is an indirect form of harassment. It is also considered as form of sexual harassment, and you can complain. Many times, we do not realize, and we keep believing, and we tell ourselves, no, the system is like that. But that should not take you away from standing up and making a complaint, because providing a healthy work environment is the responsibility of the employer, and under Posh Act, it's mandatory for them to provide an equal and healthy work environment. So if there's any form of a hostility in the environment, you can go and complain. Now, there has especially post-COVID, of course, before that also in certain industries, very specifically IT industry, we did always have the remote working option available at many levels. And there used to be challenges in that. But since the lockdown, since the COVID has struck in, there has been a huge shift in all sectors. And this work from home shift has also brought in the sexual harassment home. It's no longer that, it's happening only in the physical work environment. In fact, this is the statistics which was published by Times of India, post a survey that they made, I think it was in 2020. So this, if you look at the statistics, it's more than 50% who have said, and in fact, there are many other statistics which very clearly specify that there has been a rise of 42% in the sexual harassment, online sexual harassment at the workplace. So it makes it utmost important for us to understand that what and when is it becoming sexual harassment. Online work environment is, of course, different, and there is a huge shift from talking. We have moved to texting without having appropriate guidelines to follow, training given. In fact, we learn to talk and how to talk appropriately in our schooling, but none of our schooling have ever taught us that how to text, how to attend virtual meetings. So all of these have contributed a lot to online sexual harassment. So these are some examples of behaviors which account to sexual harassment, primarily categorized into three areas: verbal, non-verbal, and now online. So there are many examples and experiences that we all can share, and I'm definitely looking forward to hear from you all also. Very often, of course, now that we move towards online, but yes, otherwise verbal is right from, as simple act as playing a song, which is also inappropriate, as in it can make someone uncomfortable. And we had this one, so many times these things do happen unintentionally, where people really don't realize that what they are doing could account to harassment. So, in one of the organizations where I had gone for a talk, and this gentleman had the mobile ringtone as one of the songs, which had the words like "sexy, sexy, mujhe log bole," and in the middle of meeting, when a woman was speaking, his phone rings. Now, it can get extremely embarrassing, and it can get, and there was also an instance where someone had this as a caller tune. So, when you call them, there's a song like this that plays. So these are some, these are unknowingly, contributing to the harassment, and they need to be taught about. But of course, there are instances where we see that, people use these kind of languages, the compliments, the words that they use. If you happen to tell someone, or if someone tells you that, hey, you're looking sexy, let me ask you all that what would be your reaction to it? When does it become sexual harassment, and when does it not become sexual harassment? Any one of you?
Coming from the right place and the intent, and unsolicited, right? So someone I know, they don't mean, it doesn't mean too much, but if it is coming from an unknown place and for things, of course, it's not welcome.
Correct. So, like Pravina said, it's all about the impact that it makes on you. It's not on the intent of that person, because in online world, it's not really possible to gauge the intent. Even in the offline, in the physical world, sometimes intent can be hideous. Hence, it's never about the intent. It's all about how it makes you feel. Maybe at that point of time, if you are in, you're very casual about it, it may not. But the same thing happens when you feel hurt about it, you feel uncomfortable about it. It could be the same person, same environment, but depending on the situation, in what context it is said, etc., many parameters goes into it. So yes, so there are some direct verbal words that could account to this, such as whistling, making comments very specifically on body shape, or even cultural, gender based comments, as in ye kaam tumse nahi hoga, it's meant for men. And I think I should take examples from you'll have been working in corporates for quite some time. So if any one of you all can share any such verbal examples that either you have witnessed or is has happened with you.
Yes, I would like to say that. I think
Sure.
about 15 years back, when I was working in an MNC, I mean, my direct boss, actually, when talking among his friends, among other men, he used a slang where there are other women also. Probably when there are only men sitting and talking, maybe they use such words. But when suddenly he spit such kind of words in front, if on his friend desk along with us, it was quite embarrassing for all of us, actually. In fact, even for the group of men who actually heard suddenly. So it was pretty shocked. I felt, though it was not addressing to me or to any woman there, or he was not targeting any women, or he had no intention of harassing any woman, but the kind of words that was used,
Correct.
for the matter of fun or something, was really bad. I think this practice must change, isn't it? Like they kind of, laughing out or having fun by doing using those kind of litter words. I think that
True.
is that also includes. I think it should come basically from bringing up or social circles. I feel.
Yes, I was about to say that. That's so. So where does this come from? It comes very naturally from different cultures. The way you are at your home environment is different. For some, it is very okay, and for some, it's not very okay. However, where does this happen? Most often is where the work culture is not very well defined. If you define a work culture very well, that this is the kind of, so then people gel into that new culture, and then they know that okay, yahan pe this is the language. So I'll share one of my experiences when I was doing a television show with one of the very renowned media house. Now we all have certain idea of how this entire entertainment industry works, and we do have over there the it was a very, firstly, it's a very unstructured work scenario, unlike in our industries. Like, look, I also come from an IT industry. We have very well defined structure to our work. So there was that huge difference where, I used to feel that they do not respect each other's time. There'll be last moment changes, panic, location changing, shoot changing, and so many things. Also, the language. On the first day itself, they were very conscious of, okay, there is a new person amongst us. So we must be, very sober and all of that. But that shoot was for almost 1.5 months. And obviously, as the days go, people get comfortable with each other. And I believe on fifth or sixth day of my me being there, then everyone started getting a little more relaxed, and then the lingo was like, oh my god, it became to an extent such that there was not a single sentence which did not have these uh, cult words and inappropriate words. But for them, when I looked around, everyone was okay, when gender irrespective. So what I'm trying to say, of course, I was not comfortable, so I did, make it very, I communicated it well to them that, hey, look, I'm not okay with this. And I would expect that people refrain from using this kind of language when I'm around. You all are free to do what you want when I'm not around. However, the point here is that it is a lot imbibed in the work culture. In many places, uh, there's not a very well defined culture where people come back with their own mindsets. Like I had one of these this gentleman who comes from northern states, and we had this so he was one of my clients who had come to visit us. We had been working for almost 5 years, but never got an opportunity to meet. And in IT, it's very common. It doesn't matter where your client is because our services are global. So after 5 years of work together, he came to meet, and I have a team of young kids. They're all like 12 to 15 kids total. I mean, I call them kids because they're half my age. But yes, all young and mostly from Maharashtra, and one or two are from southern states. But we didn't have any except for my partner who's a North Indian. Now, when this gentleman came, so in the northern side, the culture is of hugging. It's like for how us we do say India has a culture of namaste. For them, it's they will jumpi pao and like, hey, so nice to meet you and all. I was aware of that, so it was okay for me. Now, of course, the lady who was leading his project, one of my employees, she was from South, and she was not at all used to this kind of culture. And when the gentleman, and he was a senior gentleman, when he went and hugged her, I could see the discomfort on her face. Now, as an employer at that point, I felt I should have, taken appropriate measures to inform her, educate her, as well as to my client that, well, this is how things. So the point here is it's also the cultural differences that we carry, the cultural biases that we carry, and our day-to-day lingo also has these kind of racist elements and jokes, which we carry them to work as we get more and more comfortable at the workplace. It seeps in very unconsciously. So these are called as subconscious biases. Yeah, Mrudula, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, so I just had a question. So we've been talking quite a bit about the physical connections, right? Like meeting people in person.
Right.
The language, the strong language. So is this the same kind of language, given that the physical proximity is no longer there? Is this the same kind of language that's taken online as your third form of, sexual harassment behavior? And all these, say, cuss words or, words that are not really okay. So is that being taken online? Is that where we go with online sexual harassment? Is that what happens?
I would say that it's not exactly similar, but because of course people are mindful of what they're texting, they can read. When we say, after the words are delivered, we hear, and then we realize. And plus, it's because of the subconscious bias, we don't realize what you're saying. But when you're typing, you may not find it similar. Online has its own flavor of harassment, which I will touch upon. That here, it's not only just by the words that you're using. Now we also have, because an online space is a graphical space, we have these emojis and the GIFs coming in, bringing in their own flavors of interpretation, and which leading to subtle harassment to severe harassment. All of this. So yes, it's the subconscious bias that we operate. So many times, we may not really realize that how are we perceiving is also sometimes coming from the subconscious bias that we have. For example, if you are going to hire, if I say that there is an opening for a receptionist, the picture that everyone gets in mind will be a lady. Ain't it true? Very rarely. But if I say there's an opening for compounder, so these are gender-based roles which are formed by society. It has got nothing to do with sexual orientation. A man can be a compounder, a woman can be a compounder, a man can be a receptionist, a woman can be a receptionist. The difference between sex and gender, sex is something you're born with. That's a physical, body structure that defines you as a male and a female, or as a different sex, and of course, the trans gender. But it's the communal gender-based roles which lead to these kind of subconscious biases. And inherently, if we are not aware, inherently we will start, bringing it out in our conversations. For example, you take any industry. I would have, if we would have had that much amount of time, I would have shown you certain videos which clearly distinguish. So many ads, so many of our ads have these kind of flavors in them. If any one of you all can remember anyone at this point, a business model which is again, driven by gender biases.
The walking powder ads, right?
Right. Correct. Very true.
I think it came out as
yes. Correct. So it's not defined by sex. It's defined by gender roles made by the society. And that's what defines a band. Urban Clap, very classic example. When they started with a homes, or rather mobile spa service. But what had happened, that because of the gender bias attached to it, it was only limited to women. that women are the only one who call out for spas and go to the salons or something. Or in fact, entire salon industry has eventually changed that image and made it a gender neutral place. So until and unless we get over these kind of subconscious biases which are dividing us as a gender and which are confusing us between sex and gender, is where this kind of unknowing verbal nuisances can happen. Then moving to the next form away is of non-verbal. Now this also is to a certain extent impacted by your cultural environment, by your belief systems, by your value systems. Like, it's very typically said of, that you go in, say for example, Delhi like state. वहां पे हम बहुत कैजुअली बोलते हैं कि वहां पे तो ऐसे जैसे सब बंदों की आंखों में एक्सरे लगे हैं ऐसे तुमको देखते हैं. And why don't we use it for some other place? So these are the differences which we are still far from going ahead. How they can be overcome at the workplace is by having a very strong work culture, which has a gender neutral language, which has a gender neutral role, which has a gender neutral policy and overall attitude. So whether it is, in fact, there was a very recent ad of, I think it's a Titan ad or something, which was very specific. If I get that, I will share it with Mridula, so she'll share it with you all.
Sure.
Which very clearly shows that it was all about this gentleman who talks about appraisal, and he says that, well, Kiran needs to be given appraisal, and then he explains that how Kiran has been the strongest pillar for his boss. And when he is describing, everyone has this visual of a lady, and then that's how they start imagining that of course he will side Kiran and he will favor Kiran, and to their surprise Kiran is a male. But this is how our subconscious bias, our cultural biases, they come into the play, and they change our attitude, or they impact our behavior and attitude. Besides verbal and non-verbal, now it's also the online harassment. So from as simple as sending text, it's not about what you are sending, it's also about when you're sending, where you're sending, and how. That is what is. If there is anything that needs to be communicated, there is an appropriate time, there are certain etiquettes to be followed. Digital communication in itself is a huge topic which needs to be addressed by a lot of workplaces. And because all of that is not, we never had time to do, and never had intent as well, let's not forget that, is because of these gaps is where this harassment is rising. So many times when we work with the ones who are on the other side, who are being, who end up becoming perpetrators in this way, or who end up becoming at the other side of harassment, not the receiving, but the doer, they say, I never realized. The the complainant feels that he should have known better. Sharing that on the boys group or the only women's group, and converting it into gossips, converting it into online gossips, spreading rumors, body shaming, a lot of these. So here I have further described that exactly what accounts to online sexual harassment in the remote workplace. It's very important for us to be able to identify that what is happening is actually an online harassment. Does it account to online harassment, or should I ignore? So many times it's because of that lack of clarity. We don't know, and it continues till it becomes late, or till the environment becomes very, very hostile. So if there are any statements or questions of sexual nature during the conference calls, during the video meetings, such as, hey, why are you wearing this color? It's making you look XXY and YYZ kind of, examples. Or if while, like I said, the ringtones, or so many times we've seen that during the meetings, purposely someone would play something to kind of put in a tease. It could account to harassment if the impact is such. Digital messages that are sexually suggested. So there is a way you want to compliment. Using right words with appropriate emojis is very important. And what is the best part about online world is the evidence. You cannot really take back. So you have to be extremely cautious and extremely careful. Even if you delete, you never know who has taken a screenshot. And for us women who are being subjected to this, it becomes a huge weapon that do not forget to screenshot anything that has been inappropriate. Maybe at that point you want to let it go. But tomorrow, if this continues, it helps the committee to review it as this thing. In the offline or in the real work situation, it used to take a lot of time because, how do I prove? There used to be spaces, of course, after the CCTVs and all. Now it's very different. Yet certain areas are still gray and we really cannot. But in an online environment, we do have a lot of provision for this. Then it's also the messages and apps which are sent by either by social media or different. They also will account. So if it is between two subordinates or people from same organization, even if you are conversing non-official stuff on any other third-party application, such as maybe social media, even over there, if there is any underlying element of sexual harassment, it will account to a workplace sexual harassment, which can be reported. And any other unwelcoming behavior, whether it's constantly calling, whether it is insisting that you answer my call, whether it is insisting that you put your camera on, all of these form to sexual harassment. I've made a certain list, and what I would love you ladies to actually tick mark, use your annotations. Which do you think can be accounted as sexual harassment or not? So whichever you think, yes, you can annotate and put a tick mark. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for, of course, many of you have got it correct. However, so what I had done was the left side ones. Wow, you're looking really good in that top, of course, will account to sexual harassment. Your voice sounds super sexy this morning, definitely. I'm sending you friend request on social media, accept it. Yes. If there is no request in this. So it is the impact. If I receive a text like this, I feel that, okay, there's a pressure on me to accept it. So my social media is my private space. I need to have that choice and freedom. So it does. This guy has no idea what he's talking about. This is usually a side gossip that is happening, and it is maligning. So it can be accounted as harassment. Yet it does not have a sexual tone, but it can lead to it. The ones on the right are not necessarily, accounted as sexual harassment. So depending, if this the first point, like, hey, something urgent has come up and we need to get in a meeting now at 11. If this is repeatedly happening and you feel targeted, that it's only me who has been asked to do this, then it can, depending on you having voiced out the discomfort and non-availability, etc. But until then, it could be taken as insensitivity or pressure, not necessarily sexual harassment. You need to dress up formally for the meeting and be presentable, could be part of code of conduct. So not necessarily sexual harassment, because every workplace will have a code of conduct, a proper and appropriate dressing. However, if there is a comment made on your dress, then it can account, but not this alone. It is expected from each of us to be presentable. That is a workplace requirement. But if there's a comment on that, you could have looked more prettier, you could have used a red shade of lipstick, or you could have used a dark kajal, then it gets personal, and then it gets sexual in nature. I don't care for your sob stories, get the work done before deadline, can be pressurizing, but not sexual. It can be insensitive, not yet sexual. Sunita, only you stay back on the meeting after everyone else leaves. We need to discuss something. If you receive this kind of message by voice, you can gauge better that, okay, it might be genuinely work. So just by this text when you receive, not immediately, it will not fall under the purview of sexual harassment. But if this is happening every meeting later, Sunita is asked to stay back on intent. And in the meeting, then what is happening? Alone, the statement will not account. It can account to singling out or pressurizing that, you have to work extra or something, but not necessarily sexual harassment. So there's a very thin line between the two. However, the best thing to do is voice out. Don't assume, ask. Do not take it, as an understanding that someday other person will realize. No, we all come from different backgrounds. The way you are perceiving, someone else will perceive it very differently. Like I said, that someone may be okay being told about the color of the lipstick and someone may not be okay. So it's all about the impact. The moment you feel there is any form of discomfort in this, please voice out and clarify it. So that's where you get more clarity, and you can also be very upfront with the person. Hey, look, I'm not okay with this. So if there is any gap, if there is any miscommunication, it can be corrected. Now moving on to the cyber security aspect, that how even the online harassment can be measured by cyber security measures. I think Mrudula, as a host, you may have to clear the annotations. I'm okay if they are on the screen. However, so these are some important pointers that I have put out, that it's very important, and it is your right to ask for this at your workplace when you have moved to work from home. So ask for appropriate and a clarity on work ethics. What are the timings? What are expected roles? What are expected, clearly defined expected behaviors online, gestures online? Because every work culture will have a different acceptance and a tolerance level. Sudden shift in the work from home or a remote can can make it go for a toss. So ask for a clarity on work ethics. Also remember that when we are interacting via the screen, this whole cyberspace itself is very emotionally triggering. So what it does is that it puts us into from response we move on to reaction. So it could be a very small thing when said in person. Since you have seen the body language, since you have heard, you're better able to gauge, and your impact may vary. But when it is via a screen, via a message, all of this is missing. So there are a lot of chances for you to feel it or perceive it differently, and the impact may also vary. Hence, having clarity on this is very important. Another important aspect is digital communication training. There is a different digital body language which needs to be learned and understood. What does it comprise of? That understanding what kind of language to use, which is appropriate in terms of gender neutrality, as well as its respectful language. What platform you're using for what time and platform. Again, that combination also changes the impact. So learning this is very important. When to use an emoji, when to use a GIF, and how. That also is very significant. As a company, when they are supposed to come up with an appropriate medium of communication, and it should be communicated well, plus it should also be supervised. because if it goes unsupervised, it becomes very difficult for the, any kind of instance happening to track it and to investigate it. So that is equally important. Then the cybersecurity policy should very well define the tolerance of online behavior. It should cover the online harassment aspect, and also now how do we address it? How do we report? Where do we report? And how do we address it? Should all be covered. There has to be an appropriate guideline of code of conduct of virtual meetings. I have not only in terms of sexual harassment, even as counseling clients who come for stress, anxiety because of work hours gone for toss. They have to attend meetings at midnight. Initially after the lockdown, there was a lot of chaos. Of course, now it has streamlined. However, there is still a lot of ambiguity in terms of people feeling very anxious that I don't know if I do this, will it be okay, is it accepted? So demanding this from your employer is very important, that give us a guideline so we know what is accepted, what is not accepted. And every cybersecurity policy and a plan, companies invest huge in securing their data, in securing their infrastructure. They need to include the human element in it. They need to include their employees in it. And demanding for that is definitely your right. Also, it goes a long way in preventing harassment online. And how do you, besides what your employer does, what you do for yourself is equally important. So the first and the foremost thing, you need to be aware of what are the different forms of online harassment and threats. Stalking is very common and very high on rise, and it's not necessarily that it is some random stranger. It could be someone from your work, someone from your friend circle, any of these. Plus, when it become a criminal offense or a cybercrime is also equally important to know. Then learning digital etiquettes are very essential, and following that. So it covers, there are 9 to 10 important aspects of digital etiquettes which need to be understood. And they begin with having appropriate and respectful language. Being polite all the time is utmost. And following cyber hygiene for your devices as well. So having an antivirus, having an proper two-factor authentication on, no using, if you have a clarity on what mode or what app should be used, then what kind of privacy settings are there on that app. All of these fall under the hygiene purview, and hence it's important for each one of us to take care of that. These are the important do's and don'ts when you're interacting online. So sticking to the office hours, using the tool that is offered by the company, and if not, ask them to specify. It could be a tool which is freely available, such as Zoom, but then it has to be coming in with the proper guideline that this is how that every meeting, this should be there. The video should be on, the audio should be on mute, etc. The guidelines have to be there. Being polite, respectful, professional attire. We're not saying that you have to be formally dressed or informally, but you have to be professionally dressed. Choosing the right mode of communication. What needs to go via a WhatsApp and what needs to go via a formal email. Knowing that is important. And what we should avoid. No personal jokes, no side talks, no sharing any kind of content. Very typically we see that, as a part of joke, we do share a lot of sexual content around us. And then when we receive, the impact is different, but it has to be two-way. So these are some of the important do's and don'ts. And the most important, I feel, is if we stress on having a good work-life balance. This is, if you have a healthy mind and body both, then you're able to deal with and manage every situation. 50% of the online harassment is result of an emotional distortion or stress. Throwing of power, expecting favors. All of this arises when there is an imbalance in either in your emotional quotient or at your physical level. If someone is really cranky, they can end up. So choosing a proper balance is the key to this. And with this, I come to an end of my short presentation. So thank you so much for your time and attention. If there's anything specific, my coordinates are over here, and you're always welcome to write to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nirali.
I'll just end the screen and we can take up questions. So I'll just end the sharing.
There we go. Thank you so much. And I'm talking on behalf of
my pleasure.
Because it was a very interactive in the fact that we could understand better what we thought we understood. So I think that is very critical, because so much of gray area, as you said, in what harassment is, what cyber harassment is as well. So we can only thank you so much. I wish we had so much more time. I'm sure you have tons more to discuss, but this is a big step for us. And if you could share some of the resources that you mentioned and the videos, we'll make sure to post it online as well and share it so that, at least that this way we can get others to see this as well. So, but I can thank you so much for your time. And it was a very interesting talk. And I know we restricted your time frame, but this was as much as information as you could.
No, I completely understand. And it's just that, there's so much to talk about it. And since I've been doing this, I'm really, sometimes it gets a little over passionate for me to go on and on. So I really appreciate that time check.
No, we are glad you're passionate, because this was an eye-opener for a lot of us. So on behalf of the team, thank you so much. And it was lovely talking to you and
most welcome.
Engage with you further. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. It was a very interactive session. I joined 15 minutes late, but still I found it's useful. Definitely, I would be happy if I can. If I can get your contact numbers, so that I can, in case of future requirements.
Sure. I think Rudula has it.
Archana, I can share it and
put it up.
Yeah, the final screen has it as well. So when the video comes out, I'll post it on LinkedIn as well. So everybody can access.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, I have a point here that people who are listening to this because they have come because they found it as a very important aspect to be covered. But I am very sad to feel that, whereas if there is an Alia Bhatt movie, or when there is a Salman Khan trailer, there are so many crores of views. For this topic, there are participants, have to come forward to understand what it is really and from where it starts, because the F word, the B word, that every word that targeted sexually and it's been in the culture, no matter India or US. I think people across the world should come and listen to such talks.
Yeah, that's what we are hoping, Archana.
Thank you, Divyam. See, I that's what I actually said in the start, that no effort is a wasted effort, and it does not matter how many people join. It's all about how many of them are sensitized. Even if it is one, it will go a long way. And I've always believed in empowering women, because I feel if you empower and educate a woman, the entire family is empowered and educated. I don't want to sound in terms of gender segregating or male bashing, but it's a fact. There are certain qualities that we women have.
Yes, see, we have to give you an example, like we have a menstrual campaign, 3H for her. The important people whom we are recruiting from are men.
Right.
Who are volunteering. So some are men. We purposely do that because we want to see how
and
many.
It's honestly, we are only divided biologically. Rest all is made up by the societies. In those days, when the roles were different, civilization was not there. You know, we had to hunt for food, and there were babies to look after, and they had very clear role definitions. But today, if we are still going to carry forward that thought, based now what has happened that, you know, different societies have put in their different perceptions to this and are interpreting it in a different way. That is where that we have not grown is the whole problem.
Okay, I'm going to
I've always believed, you know,
absolutely
that
I think it's
every
time we
role
sort of
is meant for both
moved
of
away.
us.
Exactly. I think we should move away from these compartmentalizations. We are way beyond it now.
Correct.
But anyway, I'm going to wrap this session up. We hardly have time, but
Yes.
thank you so much, all of you, for joining, all the support team as well. And of course, Nirali, we can't thank you enough. So do share any resources, and we'll be very happy to share it again.
Yes.
With others.
I will share the video with you. I'll put it
Absolutely.
on the LinkedIn chat, and
Yes.
do share it with them. That's a very beautiful one to watch.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, Nirali, once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nirali. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.